Okay, this is the first part of our ecology unit. And in this ecology unit, what we're first going to look at is the flow of energy through an ecosystem. An ecosystem includes all populations of species that live in a particular area and the non-living environment. So, ecosystem could be something as simple as grasses and flowers and birds and the atmosphere. That could be a simple ecosystem. So we're going to look at this flow of energy from the sun to autotrophs. Autotrophs are also known as producers, and from autotrophs to heterotrophs, which are also known as consumers. So the word autotroph literally means self-eat or self-feed. So these are producers that make their own glucose, like these flowers. And then heterotroph literally means different eat or different feed. So I see a big mouth here. It's not mine, by the way. So these are things that have to eat in order to get the materials that they need to make energy. So we'll first look here briefly at autotrophs. So autotrophs can make their own food, which is glucose, two ways. The main way that we all know about is photosynthesis. So we've just gone through photosynthesis. So everybody hopefully remembers what photosynthesis is. It's using the energy from the sun to power the chemical reactions of rearranging carbon dioxide and water from the environment into carbohydrates and oxygen. So plants are self-sufficient in terms of being able to have the glucose that they need to produce ATP, which is usable energy. So this is how this banana plant, this banana tree, is able to survive and produce energy is through photosynthesis. Now, another way to produce glucose, to produce this energy, is through something called chemosynthesis. And chemosynthesis is done by some bacteria, so some species of bacteria, you can see them here, that live on tube worms near hydrothermal vents in the bottom of the ocean. So at the bottom of the ocean, which is referred to as the aphotic zone, so there's no sunlight, photosynthesis is not an option. So instead of having sun to power the process, instead these bacteria are able to break down these chemicals that come up out of the earth and use that energy that's released to power this process of creation of glucose. Now, something else we'll talk about in ecology a little bit later on are symbiotic relationships. These bacteria that live on the tube worms live in what's called a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. So what the bacteria do for the tube worms is that they're going to break down these gases that could be toxic to the tube worms. And in return, the tube worms are going to provide a place for the bacteria to live. So it's a win-win situation. So as we look here, what we're going to see are two different food chains that you will encounter dealing with autotrophs. So food chain is going to be a big topic for us pretty soon. This is a photosynthetic food chain, so beginning with the sun, and then we have the green plant, and then the energy will be passed through different consumers. Over here, we can see the pathway starts way different. We're starting here at the hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, and then going through the food chain through different carnivores or just other consumers. So consumers, heterotrophs are typically referred to as consumers. They cannot make their own glucose. Um, Heterotrophs energy still comes from the sun, but it comes indirectly by way of other organisms, and specifically autotrophs. So autotrophs are going to ultimately provide the glucose necessary for the production of ATP to all consumers. Now, there's many different types of consumers, and you've heard of all of them. So this first section, these are our herbivores. So herb means plant, so these are our plant eaters. And since you have always known what an herbivore is. We just need to make sure in this class in general biology that you understand the adaptations of an herbivore. So, an adaptation is any characteristic that an organism possesses that makes it more likely to survive and more likely to successfully reproduce. So, when you're talking about herbivores, there's a couple big things to talk about in terms of adaptation. One of them, their teeth shape. So, they have flat teeth, and these flat, broad teeth are going to be used for grinding of the plant matter. Another adaptation is having very significant digestive tract. And in these digestive tracts, there are also bacteria that will help the plants be broken down. Um, some of these bacteria are referred to as methanogens. And typically, when we're talking about methanogens, you usually point the finger at the cows. So sometimes people will get upset at the cow because cows, they're herbivores, they eat plants, they have these methanogen in their guts and their digestive tracts that help them break down the cellulose in the plant matter. But as a byproduct, methanogens, these bacteria, now it's the bacteria in the guts, not the cows themselves that produce this, but they produce methane gas. So some people point a finger at the cows and say, you're contributing to greenhouse gases because of the methane in your flatulence. Okay, another group of consumers are the omnivores, so that would include us. So there's the humans. Um, Monkeys, so it would be all primates. Bears would be a good example. Squirrels, this possum that I found one time on my back porch. But here we're looking at, in terms of adaptations again, a couple of things we're looking at. The teeth. So omnivores, like ourselves, have the flat teeth for grinding plants and the sharp teeth for tearing flesh. So omnivore means all eat. So we're going to be able to consume plant and animal matter. So we need the sharp teeth, our canines there, for ripping and tearing like into a piece of chicken. And then we need the flat teeth for helping us grind up, let's say, an apple. And if you look at our digestive tracts, uh, they're not super long like a cow's, but they're not as short as carnivore either because we do need to be able to try to process some of the cellulose. We don't do a good job at it. It's our dietary fiber, but we do have um, a lot of small intestine. So this is your small intestine right here. It's really, really long, but it's skinny, so it's called small because of the diameter. And then FYI, there is your large intestine, and then your colon. So here's our carnivores. Our carnivores are meat eaters, and we look at adaptations of our meat eaters. First thing to look at there are these big sharp teeth for tearing flesh. Also, we could think about having um, claws, of having maybe possibly beaks. Now, beaks are adaptations of birds that might vary based upon where they are going to vary based upon what they eat. But a lot of times when you're looking at bird or prey, you're going to be looking at these big, strong beaks, strong jaws for maybe possibly cracking into a bone, cracking into a shell to allow them to get at the flesh. And when you're talking about carnivores, you can put them in two groups. So a lot of these organisms we see up here at the top, so I'm kind of swiping through them there, are referred to as obligate carnivores. So these are your predators. Um, One way to kind of think about organisms, if it's a predator or if it's prey, is to look at the position of their eyes. So the predator is going to have the eyes looking forward, so they're going to be set in the center of the face, whereas something that's prey is going to have its eyes on the side. Now, these fellows down here, like this hyena or these hateful buzzards, you probably have seen them. Um, Pecking at something on the road. It's horrific. But these are typically referred to as scavengers. So they're not predatory animals going out hunting and killing. They're more opportunistic. These are detrivores. Now, detrivores feed on detritus, and detritus simply is just dead stuff. Some people will consider some detrivores, like this crab and this little tiny baby shrimp, consider them unclean, so they won't eat them because of what they consume. So when you see crab or shrimp, they're going to be feeding on something that's already dead. These are dust mites. So if you have allergies and you're allergic to dust, really what you're probably allergic to are the dust mites themselves. So these detrivores are going to feed on things that are already dead. In fact, this crab right here is a crab that we caught at the Chesapeake Bay. So taking this picture, I'm actually on a boat out in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, well, nearer to the Virginia side. And how we baited our crab pots is we put two dead fish in there that we ripped in half. So it was something that was already dead and they could just nibble on it. And then, and I know this picture might look a little gross, but these are decomposers. So decomposers do what decomposers do. They accelerate the process of decomposition or the breaking down of organic material. Now, I've got some examples here, but the two basic groups, we've got bacteria, typically referred to also as saprobes. And here are the three different shapes of bacteria. They can be circular, rod-shaped, or spiral. And then up here, this nasty picture showing you what a throat looks like when somebody has strep throat. Ick. And then this is what the strep bacteria looks like. Each of these are individual little circles there. They're connected together, so they're still unicellular organisms. And bacteria can be named for their shape and the arrangement. So this is Streptococcus. So the coccus means circular, and strepto is a chain. So you've got a chain of circular bacteria. Then over here we have the other type of decomposers. We have fungi. So mushrooms. You've probably seen a lot of pictures of people hunting for these little bad guys there. Yeah, taking your chances with that. This is Rhizopus stolonifer. So this is the scientific name for black bread mold. You see how yummy that looks right there. Now, fungus, you can see there, they reproduce by spores. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with bread or maybe cheese, and you look at a piece in the pack and it looks kind of like there's a little green furry spot, and you're like, oh, it's just this one. I'll just throw this one away. Well, maybe or maybe not, because these spores are going to spread throughout the packaging, and you may just not have enough of them yet in order to see them. So this is kind of zooming in on what these guys look like, and then microscopically, this is what they look like. So you got to have a lot of them to be able to see them like this. And then down here for humans, we have ringworm, and then we also have athlete's foot, and this one looks pretty nasty. But microscopically, this is what they look like. The fungus that causes the ringworm, it's not a worm, it's a fungus. And then the fungus that causes the athlete's foot, so it could give you stinky, itching feet because this fungus is living off of your dead skin cells. Yuck.